How's it going, everyone? Jiivita here, and welcome to Testing 208. This introduces all sorts of really awesome stuff, including, well, LEDs, which is what you're looking at right now, as well as it gives us a sneak peek or information on the Winter Festival that's coming up. I believe it starts the 18th, if I remember correctly. This also has the forging rebalance in it, as well as a bunch of other kind of nice little bug fixes, optimizations, etc, etc. But anyway, let's get down to business and take a look at these awesome LEDs. So LEDs are crafted in the refinery. They require decorative crafting rank 3, and all it requires is a little bit of spark, refined gleam, any base metal, so copper or iron, and ancient tech remnants. And they can be crafted up to 50 at a time if you're using mass crafting. The color of the LED, of course, is dependent on the color of gleam used. Once you've crafted them, they start off in the off position, and the way you turn them on is to actually use a changing chisel. And a changing chisel is one that's been forged with the change block type Boone or the transmutation Boone. These are pretty easy to forge, but you just hit that and you get this handy little indicator. Actually, James had to come along and cue me into this, that this was even here, but as you can see, there's 4 little symbols. There's an X, O, O, O. And so the X's are the times when the LED is on, and you can think of this as like a 4-card flip book. So you can have just the second one on, the third one on, the fourth one on, and then basically all the combinations in between. So now this is on for 2 ticks, off for 2 ticks, and now it's just alternating every tick on and off. And now it's on for 2, off for 2, and yeah, so you can make all sorts of crazy stuff with this. Came over here and I animated the Boundless logo just for fun. Made this crazy wall. I was just trying to see, like, you can get these kind of like lights running along in streams, and I was experimenting with the different ways you can accomplish that same effect, or the different timings, I guess, in between. So pretty interesting. And over here, James made this awesome countdown from 4 all the way to 1. So again, this is kind of like a 4-card flip book. So each card you could display a different letter, number, whatever you want, or a picture. James made this awesome kind of, starts off as a frowny face, goes to a smile, and then sunglasses. So that's pretty awesome. And over here, I couldn't resist but make a crazy kind of disco floor, and you almost have to grapple up to appreciate this. I wanted to see if I could get kind of like a wave going in an angle there, and then on the outsides I have lights going around, kind of circling the whole thing. It gets a little kind of crazy looking, but pretty interesting nonetheless. James made this pretty awesome, like, turn right type sign. And over here is kind of a failed attempt at making like wrapped Christmas lights around this tree. I did make a slightly more organized attempt over here, and I guess if you get them kind of spaced just right, and you could maybe get them to look like Christmas trees wrapped around, or Christmas lights wrapped around a trunk. But so yeah, pretty awesome little feature, and so many, like, it's been mind-boggling to figure out. At first I was like, oh, I want to make like a whole entire scrolling sentence, but again, it's a 4-card flip book, so yeah, I can make the B scroll over 4 times, but that was about the limitation of that. Certainly behind it, I guess I could use maybe these unused frames to maybe squeeze in another letter, but yeah, I can't really get a whole sentence to go across. It could certainly flash a series of letters, or even like each card have its own 4-letter word or something like that, but pretty interesting nonetheless. It's also good to note that while LEDs do light up the block themselves, they don't light up anything around them. So they're kind of like the signs, they just have emissive lighting, but it actually kind of has a nice effect that you could have still dark areas and yet have kind of like a guiding light, or maybe like on either side of your walkway have some LEDs, almost like a runway. But pretty interesting. It also has the added benefit of the LEDs not really competing with each other for lighting the area. So if you're using a lot of different colors, you can still control the lighting completely independent of the LEDs. So I think that's a pretty nice system. It's also good to note that these do not count as a mesh, so these are just regular old blocks, and as such you can chisel them to your heart's content. So you can either kind of layer them, kind of like what I've done here. So I have LEDs on the back, and then with the beveled chisel I just made this kind of green zigzag going across the red and white LEDs. And if you're unfamiliar how to forge a changing chisel, all you have to do is throw, well, a chisel into the forge, have some effect gums, some setting resin, and some sort of Boone compound that's going to add Boone points. So let's just go ahead and throw on several effect gums. There we go, so we got 3 effect gums on there, and now we just start putting on Boone points. And there we go, we got the transformation Boone. There's only 1 rank of this, so once you get it, you can go ahead and use the setting resin to finalize the forging process, or you could maybe even throw some longevity gum on there and try to get the durability Boone to make it last a little bit longer. It just really depends on how much effort you want to put into making them. And there we go, after 20 minutes they'll be ready, and as you can see right here, it has changes block type right there, as well as right here down below. So, very nice. Another thing that was revealed alongside this testing release is the winter event. So this is going to be essentially, well, the winter event or the Christmas event for Boundless. And yeah, sounds really nice. It starts the 18th of December at noon European time, or UTC, and it will run until the 1st of January. So that gives you a full 2 weeks to enjoy this event. I mentioned that weather forecasts across the known worlds are predicting heavy snow, and citizens should be advised to have their screenshot tools at the ready to make most of some of the most beautiful scenes which are sure to arise. They mentioned that there'll be special creatures which will drop a new item once defeated, the green candy cane. These can be used to craft a number of special decorative items for your homes, including wrapped presents and decorative Oort trees. They also mentioned that snow citizens, which I imagine are going to be snowmen, can also be built using alternative drop the red candy cane, which they just kind of said more information to come later. Of course, all of these will be tintable based on the resources that you use to craft these, so if they take stone, it'll probably be based off of the color of stone used to craft them or whatever else is used. Actually, probably ice and stuff like that maybe, or glacier. And naturally there will be some exclusive wearables in the exchange, including Oort beards, antlers, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Wildstock, and even a snow citizen mask, which again I'm taking as a snowman, so pretty awesome there. And last but certainly not least, this sounds like a really cool thing, is that on the home worlds or the spawn worlds or the level 1 and 2 worlds, however you want to refer to them, they will have special meteor events, except they're not really meteors, they are meteorite-sized snowballs crashing into the planet. This sounds like a pretty interesting twist on the meteor, because they will spawn snow spitters instead of normal creatures. They'll be impervious to all regular attacks, and you actually have to collect snow and ice from the meteor impact zone and handcraft snowballs in order to defeat the spitters. Another really cool thing is that this is meant to be a completely level playing field, in that there will be no death penalty for these events, and instead they will be building up embarrassment. So I guess instead of taking damage, you'll be building up embarrassment. If you build up too much embarrassment, you'll be sent back to the sanctum without your meteor life. So essentially it doesn't matter if you're level 50 or level 1, it shouldn't make too much of a difference. I guess you could, okay, level 1's not going to have very fast run speed and things like that, but more or less a pretty even playing field. And that is actually where you get the red candy canes from, is from doing these events on the level 1 and 2 worlds. So that sounds pretty awesome. Run around, have snowball fights with snow spitters, so pretty cool. And moving along to the Forge rebalance, if you saw my last video on the Forge rebalance, it's mostly pretty much the same as far as I can tell. If you're unfamiliar or missed that video, they basically wanted to make forging easier to get into, as well as smooth out some of the more cheesy in-game strategies for forging. So the way they made it easier is now all the basic Boone compounds have much simplified recipes. So before, this took some like spitter eyeballs or something and was really kind of annoying for new players. So now all the level 1 Boone compounds are just the compound base as well as some fresh vital essence. Pretty easy to craft. Furthermore, you can now collect reactive lamella from level 3 worlds, so no longer do you have to go to level 4 worlds and have atmospheric protection just to get the basic materials to forge. And to make the imperfect Boone compounds a bit more competitive, they reduce the defect points that they add by just a little bit across each rank of it, so that should be pretty nice. Another way that they made forging easier for beginners is now the maximum effectiveness is no longer capped at 100%, now it can go all the way up to 200%. So even without power, without a proper forging spec, you should be able to get a very high effectiveness, fairly easy for low level gear. This also means even without power on your Centriforge, you can get a very high effectiveness for gem equipment. So that is pretty amazing that you don't even really need power on your Centriforge to have a near 100% effectiveness for at least diamond gear. Amethyst and Topaz would be a little bit lower. However, you should be able to get some pretty decent results even without power on your Centriforge. And as you can see here, the Forging Epic now expands the ingredient deck all the way up to 10 ingredients. That's an extra 2 on top of what we were getting. And so yeah, that means you can bring 2 more ingredients to be able to handle either quirks or maybe a deconstructing resin that now will return the item to you along with your forging ingredients, or at least a certain percentage of them. And so yeah, now if you mess up, you can reclaim not only the item, but some of the forging materials instead of having to sacrifice the item to get your forging materials back. So that is a very nice quality of life change there. Another nice boost for early game forgers is now the flexibility of gold and silver has been increased by 10 points respectively. So gold now has a flexibility of 40, whereas silver has a flexibility of 50. If you're unfamiliar, flexibility affects the effectiveness of the forging process, or what percentage of the boon points actually makes it to the boons. So in other words, the more flexible the gear is, the easier it is to forge. And the major change to in-game forging is that now the draining boon compound only lasts for 3 rounds instead of 5. Basically what was happening is everybody was stacking massive amounts of debuffs and then using a vigor catalyst to turn all of those debuffs into vigor, essentially giving you near infinite vigor. So that was a little bit cheesy. Now you only get 3 rounds of debuffs. In addition to that though, you also now get quirk points with both versions of the draining boon compound. So now you have to kind of balance out the quirks, but quirks now also have a positive effect to them as well as a negative effect. So you can actually now forge even more powerful gear by getting the right quirks along with the right boons. So that is pretty interesting right there. And coming over to the Draining Boon Compound 1, you can see it only gives you 160 quirk points. It only costs 50 vigor, and its vigor debuff only costs 20 vigor. So that is actually a pretty good deal, especially if you have 200% effectiveness. That gives you 800 boon points. And so yeah, if you have 200% effectiveness, this Draining Boon Compound 2 almost seems like a huge waste, because you're getting 2,000 boon points and yet the bar can only hold 1,000 boon points. Not to mention it is the same number of debuffs, so you can still use the vigor catalyst to regain some vigor, plus the debuff is only taking 20 vigors, so it works out pretty decently. So going over some of the changes to the quirks, most now have a positive component to them as well as a negative component. However, the bouncy feet quirk, I would like to warn you that it's still pretty bad. It makes everything feel like trampolines when you jump on it. However, if you land on something hard like stone or these LED blocks, you take some pretty severe fall damage. And if you fall from really any distance at all, it may very well be fatal. If not on the first bounce, but on the second or third. So that's still one to stay away from, but some of these other ones look pretty awesome. So the slow-mo quirk before just reduced your movement speed, now it reduces your walk speed, however it actually lets you run a little bit faster, roughly 25%, and the one jump ahead Boone, which is making me randomly jump right now, will now actually let you double jump even if you don't have the skill. So that is pretty awesome. I mean, you have to deal with some random jumping, but then you can jump an extra block higher than you normally would be able to without having to take the skill. So that is pretty nice. In the bleeding edge quirk, it gave you some damage over time, but now it actually increases your maximum health by, I believe it's 20 or 30%, something like that. But as you can see, now my health bar is a little bit bigger. I only take 10 damage and I'm actually healing 20 HP. So as long as I'm well fed, I'm actually regenerating health. And now I have a little bit of extra maximum health. So the bleed might be dependent on how much HP you have, because somebody was telling me it only did 5 points of damage, but yeah, at any rate, I'm still regenerating more health than I'm actually losing. Also, the slippery feet quirk, or on icy ground debuff, also gives you 40 falling armor, which should reduce, well, fall damage. So oh, very nice. I hardly took any fall damage. Let's try something a little bit higher. Yeah, very nice. And coming over here, we have essentially 6 boons split into 3 categories that kind of mirror each other. So the first one is we have damage increased during the day, but during the night it's decreased, and then the exact inverse of that. So extra damage at night, but decreased during the day. Moving along, we have something similar for action speed, except this time it's dependent on health. So if you have high health, you'll get extra action speed. Low health, you'll have reduced action speed. And over here we have energy drain increased while hungry but reduced while full, and then energy drain increased while full but reduced while hungry. So quite nice. And then finally, that sinking feeling quirk now allows you to breathe underwater or hold your breath underwater 30% longer, and it actually works pretty awesome in that it slows down the usage of your breath meter. So I'm sinking a little bit faster, it's about 30% faster, and if I unequipped this item, you can see my breath bar immediately starts draining faster. Put it back on and it slows to a crawl. So that is very, very nice. And moving along from the Forge, there's been a couple of kind of cosmetic or quality of life things that's been added or changed, but now when you go to the exchange to collect your rewards, it now shows you your experience out of 200,000 if you're level 50 plus, instead of just showing your total amount of experience that you have. So that's pretty nice. That's kind of annoyed me. You could go over to the profile and see the same information here without seeing the total amount of experience that you had, but then down here they actually added some new information such as how many skill pages you have, skill points, skill page resets, cleanse points, appearance change tokens, tent kits, and even how much Gleam Club membership you have left. So that is all pretty nice that all that information is a little bit more accessible and all in one spot. And naturally, there's been a number of bug fixes and performance tweaks. Particularly for the PS4, they rearranged the memory layout to reduce the out-of-memory crashes. Also, when the PS4 is very low on memory, it will reduce the amount of memory used for other world portals, or the worlds on the other side of portals, rather. So basically, if you get really low on memory, it'll kind of scavenge or reclaim some memory from some not-so-needed areas. So pretty nice. They also fixed a bug for the crosshairs and the grapple. So basically, if you had extra range forged onto your grapple, or maybe you had grapple mastery, it wouldn't necessarily give you that indicator that you're within range. So that should be fixed. So it seems to be much, much more accurate now. Very nice. Anyway, I think that covers 208 pretty well. There's some pretty awesome new features, those LED blocks, the new quirks, and yeah, the winter event that's coming, all very, very nice. But anyway, this was Jiivita. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and if there's anything you didn't like, please let me know down below. Also, if you like my channel, want to get cool perks, check out my Patreon page. Until next time, peace.